Judah, let the lion roar. Hail, hail, Lion of Judah, let the lion roar. Hail, hail, Lion of Judah, let the lion roar. Hail, hail, Lion of Judah.
Today I'm out here in Arizona City at the substation for the Pinal County Sheriff's Office. I'd like to talk a little bit about this channel. I've had some people complain about the music, the background music. We're trying to navigate how to investigate and expose what has happened here that has brought us to this point. We have a team of people working very hard to keep a victim alive. There are lives at stake. What we are working to show the world has already cost people jobs, their safety, their homes, and the government here has done nothing but try to cover it up. See, in Pinal County, Arizona, you never know who's cartel, who's dirty, who's corrupt, or what is really happening behind the scenes. This problem stretches across Arizona all the way up to the governor. But this isn't a governor level problem. This is much smaller. So the music is a way of keeping people entertained, or hoping to, while we work on exposing what we see unfiltered. Sharing each section of video of what we capture our officers doing in this state. It's not about hiding the facts or misconstruing what we're witnessing for clickbait. We want to give true transparency of everything we're witnessing, everything we're finding, so there's a well-documented trail of this investigation. So those clips, they're just evidence, one way or the other, good or bad. We've reached out to people like Lackluster and Long Island Audit and others for help. We've got no attention. This has already reached the media and has a $1.5 million lawsuit behind it, with more coming. What has happened here is so far from okay, and the level of what we're dealing with, we're unsure of. So a lot of effort's been put into protecting the identities of the people that are investigating these situations that we're looking into, and these locations and these people. It's not traditional, it's not in your face, it's not walking in and sticking a camera right in their face. I know that's what sells views, but this isn't clickbait. This is about life, liberty, freedom, and a sheriff's department that is so stuck on its YouTube fame that people can't see what's happening right under their very nose. A woman's life, multiple women's lives, were ruined by this sheriff's department. And the sheriff's department and the Superior Court did nothing to protect them. Not only did they do nothing to protect them, they prosecuted them. But don't take my word for it. Here's the news story. Arizona City woman has multi-front fight against domestic abuse.
Arizona City, just after calendars flipped from 2024 to 2025, Amy sat at a table in a Phoenix Denny's to meet Mary and another friend who came to help. Amy's boyfriend, Bob, had been verbally and emotionally abusing her for years. They sat around the table and decided to take a stand. Amy had just flown back into the state from seeing her family for the holidays. Her phone was being bombarded with texts and calls from Bob, who wanted to know where she was. She and Mary explained. Bob was told her flight would arrive 2 to 3 hours later than it actually did. Now, more than 10 months since that flight, Amy and those who have rallied around her have fought back through numerous court cases and have dealt with mental health counseling services in the Pinal County Sheriff's Office, though they remain largely disillusioned with the system. Sources in this story are being identified by alternate names to protect their privacy. Silence is death, Amy said, and you have to keep saying it. Silence reinforces the isolation of trauma. According to the National Domestic Violence Hotline, almost half of all women and men in the U.S. experience psychological aggression by an intimate partner in their lifetime, 48.4% and 48.8%, respectively. Both Amy and Bob have been divorced in prior marriages and neither had children. They met more than a decade ago in 2013 and briefly dated. She moved out of state for a while and moved back. When she did, they got back together and moved to Arizona City in 2019. Things went well for a little while. According to Amy, Bob's behavior changed after a surgery for an intestinal disorder almost 5 years ago. After the surgery, he vastly changed, she said. They sought medications that helped for a little while but faded. Eventually, he was put on medication for psychosis. He couldn't sleep, started hoarding and stopped selling for his eBay business. Amy described being constantly screamed at and berated. His behavior became erratic. He never hit her. I almost wish he had, because then I would have something to show for it. That continued up until the start of this year, but since engaging with the abuse and invoking the various local institutions set up to protect those in such situations, Amy has felt new kinds of friction. A Pinal County Superior Court filing by Amy in October chronicles this turbulence and the friction she has encountered throughout 2025. We want folks to use the system, and we want it to work the way it was intended to work, Danielle Wright, Chief Operating Officer for the Arizona Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence, ACIDS, said. Because of stories like this, we understand why folks don't come forward. Amy first filed for a protective order against Bob, which was granted to her in Casa Grande Municipal Court on January 2nd. However, since then, Amy has stated, and the complaint alleges, Bob has violated that order repeatedly. According to the complaint filed in the civil case, another man, Charles, is included as a defendant. The complaint alleges that Bob and Charles have conspired to harass and intimidate Amy, and that the two of them lived in a house a mere 4 doors down from the home in Arizona City where Amy and Bob used to live. In 2024 and 2025, Charles and Bob engaged in a coordinated campaign to terrorize, threaten, and harass the plaintiff, forcing her to relocate from her residence, the complaint reads. The complaint details a campaign of intimidation by the two men, which included taking videos of her in her home, making false and slanderous statements to Amy's friends and family, and making false reports to law enforcement claiming that Amy stole Bob's property. Through the lawsuit, Amy is seeking damages of $1.5 million in addition to what might be determined at a trial. But, she said, she doesn't care about the money, she cares about justice. The suit alleges defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, fraud, conversion, unjust enrichment, invasion of privacy, trespassing, and assault. Both Wright and Kristen Fitzharris, the Director of Litigation and Legal Aid at Southern Arizona Legal Aid Incorporated, spoke about how the court system has been used against victims of domestic violence by their abusers and what can be done to combat it. Seems a little dangerous to me that you could have an order of protection. It happens all the time where it's not followed, but so boldly to move so close, Wright said when hearing about Amy's situation. Wright spoke about another issue regarding a lack of follow-ups by law enforcement. If protection orders are violated, as in this case, victims are instructed to contact law enforcement. They are doing that, she said, but often from what ACIDS hears is that nothing happens afterward. According to court filings in 2 separate Central Penal Justice Court cases, Bob has been cited for failing to comply with a court order. In each case, Bob has failed to appear and has had arrest warrants issued for him. We don't want survivors to lose faith in the system or in how orders of protection work, or are supposed to work, Wright said. Domestic violence is about power and control, and there's still that control piece that's happening if violations are not being followed up in accordance with the way they should be. Early on during the process, Bob filed for an injunction citing harassment by Mary, which was unsubstantiated and was not granted by a judge. Amy and Mary considered it to be retaliation. Injunctions against harassment are a different type of restraining order that applies to neighbors and does not require a domestic relationship in the way an order of protection does. Orders of protection apply to those in romantic relationships or family members. Lately, Wright said the ACIDS has been seeing more neighbors getting injunctions against harassment against each other. As Wright and Fitzharris said, issues surrounding the weaponization of the courts have long been discussed and debated, and there are many factors to weigh when considering whether improvement has been made. As each of them spoke about their work into the issues broadly, hints of Amy's story could be applied in multiple instances. Now, what we're seeing is a push for some changes with family court, like required counseling and therapy for families going through the family court system. In 2022, HB 2604 was passed extending the protection order duration from 1 year to 2 years. The change went into effect starting in September 2022. According to data by the Arizona Judicial Branch on orders of protection filed within Arizona courts, excluding injunctions against harassment, The number of protection orders filed since 2020 has not reached pre-2020 numbers but had increased steadily until a dip in 2024. Fitzharris said that the court system is but one tactic used by abusers. As a baseline, she said the vast majority of people who petition for orders of protection are telling the truth, 90%. Out of the 10% of people seeking some form of a protection order, many of them are doing so for retaliatory reasons, as in this case. Sometimes these cross orders are not evaluated together in court, which has created issues, she said, as the full context is being omitted, meaning that retaliatory orders of protection or injunction against harassment isn't being viewed as such. Trouble arises when both parties are attempting to hold onto the same residence. Similarly, Amy mentioned that the various cases in which she has been embroiled have not been viewed as a string of events, but have instead been viewed individually, which obfuscates the overall effect and systemic effort applied by abusers. It gets complicated when litigating these sorts of cases, she said, as there are different standards of proof depending on the type of hearing. For protection orders, it's reasonable cause, which is a lower standard, meaning easier to obtain, than a win in a contested hearing, which is an optional hearing to begin with. The burden of proof there is a preponderance of the evidence. So if an abuser cross-files a protection order, requests a contested hearing and wins, they can use that to argue for the home or for custody of the children. This is a real difficult issue. Some judges are more open to it, some are not, but ultimately they've got to sit here, and they're not there when this is happening outside in the world, and they're not seeing how people are really acting and treating each other. And so it's really hard when people are cleaned up and in a suit on their best behavior in court to determine who the aggressor is, Fitzharris said. Fitzharris also mentioned the idea that it's difficult to determine who the actual abuser is sometimes. There's denial of credibility, she said, especially of women, mothers, indigent people, people of color. Fitzharris is trying to combat the idea of a concerted effort to deny perfectly good fathers custody because, as she said in the beginning, she relies on the benchmark that about 90% of petitioners in these cases are telling the truth. There's not this epidemic of people going in there and lying in order to get court cases in their favor, Fitzharris said. That does happen, of course, but it's not widespread, and there are signs that may indicate this. Victims of domestic violence are typically women. According to the National Domestic Violence Hotline, approximately 4 in 5 victims of intimate partner violence were female from 1994 to 2010. However, anyone can be a victim. Sometimes, she said, there's an idea that a victim must act a certain way, and if they don't appear that way in court, if they're looking away when they speak, or if they're crying, or if they're not crying, then they must be lying. There is no typical way for a victim to act. Also, memory loss can be a response to trauma, so if a victim appears in court and has trouble relaying everything that has happened, that does not automatically indicate a lie. Amy has been living out of state for months now. She has largely lost faith in county institutions and does not feel safe enough to come back to the state. Here's the good news, she said once, I'm starting to feel like me again. It's not without a lot of trauma therapy and reading and understanding what's gone on. This county needs help, though. If we are ever going to move ahead, we cannot add to being in the top 5 states for domestic violence.
In this case, there was no fight for residency. The victim owned it. There was a fight for freedom, for witnesses, and victims of the case. Felons were not held accountable. Deputies were implicated. They worked together, according to the defense. What we have here is a clear-cut case of law enforcement not doing their job, covering up for convicted felons and criminals, people that were caught on video committing the crimes. Yet the prosecutor's office chose to do nothing or reduce charges. We have a system here that is so broken, so two-tiered, that victims were prosecuted, witnesses were prosecuted, persecuted, not aided, and not supported. And there's already a lawsuit behind it. You have to begin to ask yourself what is really going on in Pinal County, Arizona, when 0 lawsuits against the county have been successful. When people have sued this county and everyone has lost. There was no fight over children here. All we had was a victim and people rallying behind that victim, and the system still failed with evidence. Yet these deputies have plenty of time to sit around their stations. Plenty of time to sit around playing with magazines on the side of the street and tasers while the system fails these victims. Pinal County is not holding themselves accountable. They're not taking responsibility. And it's now a $1.5 million lawsuit with more coming behind it. You have to ask yourself, what's your freedom worth? Freedom doesn't come with a recliner. This could cost us everything. But this is a different kind of audit. We are not the audit they expected. There are professionals here. Industry professionals, professional employees, corporate people. We are not the ones they expected, but we're the ones they're gonna get. We are watching. And until justice is served, we're gonna be here, exposing Pinal County